Have you ever caught yourself thinking, better to let it go, it's not worth arguing, I'm bigger than this? How many times have you swallowed the right word, the necessary response, the scream stuck in your throat just to avoid a conflict? Well, I'm going to tell you something that might hurt to hear. Every time you do this, you betray yourself. We exist in a culture that idolizes surface-level peace. From a young age, we're conditioned to believe that avoiding confrontation reflects maturity, that being polite means keeping quiet when something disturbs us, that choosing silence makes us superior. But that's a lie. Nietzsche recognized this with unflinching clarity. He saw that much of what we call virtue is often just fear in disguise. Fear of conflict, fear of losing affection or validation, fear of being labeled as selfish, aggressive, or difficult. But let me tell you this. As long as your life is driven by the need to please and the fear of conflict, you'll be doomed to swallow your own rage. The philosopher referred to this as slave morality, a value system born from the powerless, from the resentful, from those who lack the strength to fight back. So instead, they learn to mask themselves with humility and submission. And the worst part? This has now become the standard. It's the default model of behavior today. You believe you're being good when in truth you're simply allowing yourself to be controlled. Pause for a moment and think, how many injustices have you put up with just to keep the peace? How often have you stayed quiet, even when you knew deep down you should have spoken? How many times have you swallowed disrespect, humiliation, and offenses, all for the sake of so-called harmony? I'm not saying you should go around picking fights with everyone. That's not the point. The point is reclaiming your right to exist with dignity. Because here's the truth, if you don't learn how to confront conflict, it will slowly consume you from within. Resentment will pile up and eventually you'll break. And when that happens, you'll either erupt in the worst possible way or shut down completely, convinced that being a good person means being harmless. But Nietzsche offers a way out, a philosophy that invites you to break this cycle of submission, that shows you how conflict, far from being an enemy, can be a path to your liberation. In this video, we will dive into Nietzsche's ideas about the fear of confrontation. You will understand how this slave morality still shapes your life today, and more importantly, how you can overcome it. Are you ready to hear some uncomfortable truths? Then stay until the end. What you will discover here could forever change the way you see the world and yourself. The origin of the fear of conflict, the moral slave. To understand why you fear conflict so much, you need to go beyond personal experiences and look into the depths of human moral history. And no one has done this more relentlessly than Friedrich Nietzsche. In On the Genealogy of Morals, Nietzsche reveals a brutal process. The values you carry today or that you judge as good did not arise from nobility of spirit, but from impotence, resentment, and the need for the weak to defend themselves against the strong. Imagine a time when strength was law. Noble men, warriors, did not apologize for their will to power. They dominated, imposed limits, sought their affirmation in the world. Their morality was active, affirmative. Good was that which reflected strength, courage, greatness, self-sufficiency. But then there were the others, the weak, the resentful, those who couldn't win in the game of power. Lacking the strength to assert their will, they were left with only one option, to flip the game on its head. And how did they do that? By inventing a new morality rooted in the reversal of values. What was once seen as noble, strength, courage, pride, was now labeled as sinful, as wrong. And what used to be considered weakness, obedience, humility, submission, was suddenly praised as virtue. But not out of any true longing for goodness. It was born out of necessity. It was a survival tactic. Nietzsche referred to this as slave morality, a morality not born from a vibrant, life-affirming spirit, but from the denial of life itself. It's a value system that exalts withdrawal, renunciation, and passivity, as though they were superior choices, when in truth, they're just unconscious defenses against the inability to take action. And you might assume this is all behind us, something from a distant past. But it's not. This morality is still very much alive. It shaped the education you received. It echoes in the phrases you've heard since you were a child. Don't talk back. Don't argue. Be nice. Don't make a scene. From early on, you were trained to link confrontation with wrongdoing and submission with virtue. Each time you stay quiet, lower your head, or dodge conflict just to preserve the illusion of peace, you're being ruled by this slave morality. But understand this clearly. It doesn't mean you're inherently weak or submissive. It means you were taught to see strength, boundary, setting, and self-assertion as something wrong. You were conditioned to think that being good meant being harmless. The result? A psychological pattern that traps millions of people. Fear of confrontation, fear of taking a stand, fear of claiming your own power. You convince yourself that you are mature by avoiding conflicts, when in fact, it is fear that paralyzes you. And the more you flee, the stronger the slave morality becomes within you. But there is another poison in this process. Because the anger you repress does not disappear. It ferments inside you, transforms into resentment. And this will be the theme of our next part. You will understand how resentment is the hidden fuel of this passivity you carry, and how it undermines your life from the inside out. So keep going. The hardest truths are yet to come. If you find this content valuable, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. Resentment, the root of toxic passivity. Now that you understand how the morality of the slaves shaped their fear of confrontation, it is time to look deeper into one of the most corrosive feelings it generates: resentment. Nietzsche was a master at dissecting the human soul, and few times was his analysis as relentless as when he described the workings of resentment. In On the Genealogy of Morals, he explains that resentment arises when a vital impulse, the desire to act, to assert oneself, to impose one's will, is frustrated and cannot manifest. But the energy does not disappear. It turns inward, and instead of transforming into action, it becomes poison. The resentful person is someone who wants to act but feels unable to. They wish they could confront the aggressor, but fear holds them back. They long to claim their space, yet worry about the consequences. So instead, they suppress that inner force and begin crafting a moral story to justify their inaction. I'm better because I don't respond. I'm more noble because I forgive. I'm above it all because I don't lower myself to argue. But none of this is true. Behind the mask of moral superiority hides a buried anger, a silent frustration, a sense of helplessness that eats away at the soul. And you feel it, even if you refuse to admit it. Every time you remain silent in the face of an offense and then spend hours ruminating on what you could have said, that is resentment. Every time you see someone abusing your goodwill, and instead of asserting yourself, you just accumulate bitterness, that is resentment. Every time you pretend to be at peace but feel a growing bitterness for not being able to defend your boundaries, that is resentment. Nietzsche warns us, the resentful person is not just a victim, they are an accomplice to their own imprisonment. By not confronting conflict when it is necessary, you feed this poison within you, and over time, it destroys you. But Nietzsche did not believe we are condemned to this fate. There is a way out, a path of profound transformation, and it involves cultivating the will to power, the ability to assert your existence without shame, without guilt, without fear. This is what we will talk about in the next part. You will discover how to reclaim this vital force and break once and for all with the pattern of submission, the will to power, the antidote to submission. So far, you have seen how the morality of slaves and resentment shape your fear of conflict and imprison your lives. But Nietzsche was not a thinker who was content to merely diagnose the diseases of the soul. He sought paths of overcoming, and the key to breaking free from this prison lies in one of his most powerful concepts, the will to power. It's a concept that has been widely misunderstood throughout history. Some have mistakenly reduced it to a mere thirst for domination over others, a serious misinterpretation. When Nietzsche speaks of the will to power, he's referring to something far more profound, the core drive behind all life. Everything that lives longs to expand, to assert itself, to grow, and to exceed its own limitations. That is the will to power. It's the force that pushes the seed to break through the soil, the cub to venture out into the world, the human being to create, to strive, to transcend. But slave morality tries to smother this will. It tells you, don't express your desires, don't stand out, don't challenge, don't be threatening. It wants to shrink you into something small, harmless, and easily controlled. Yet when you suppress your will to power, it doesn't vanish, it turns inward, it festers. And that's when resentment, passivity, and self-pity begin to take root. To reclaim your will to power is to reconnect with the life force you were conditioned to fear. It means letting go of the illusion that submission equals virtue. It means recognizing that life is conflict, and that facing it consciously isn't violence for its own sake, but a bold affirmation of your existence. And how do you do this? First, by recognizing that the fear of conflict is not a virtue, it is a vice you inherited and now need to overcome. Second, by starting to take a stand in small things. Learn to say no, learn to set boundaries, reclaim the right to exist fully. Third, by cultivating the courage to face the inevitable conflicts of life with awareness and presence. Not to destroy the other, but to assert yourself in the world. The will to power is not about oppressing. It is about ceasing to be oppressed. It is about living with integrity, with a straight spine, with a free soul. But Nietzsche knew that this transformation does not happen overnight. It requires a deep process, an inner rebirth. And to explain this process, he gave us one of the brightest metaphors in philosophy: the metamorphosis of the spirit from the camel to the lion, and from the lion to the child. This is what we will explore in the next part. You will discover how to stop being the camel that carries the burden of submission, to become the lion that conquers freedom, and finally the child that creates new values. From camel to the lion, conflict is rebirth. Nietzsche didn't just expose the hidden poisons of slave morality and resentment. He also gave us a symbolic map for the inner transformation we must undergo to break free from these chains. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he outlines the three metamorphoses of the spirit: the camel, the lion, and the child. This isn't just a metaphor. It's an existential roadmap, a guide toward true liberation. Let's start with the camel. The camel is the spirit that carries burdens. It bends under the weight of others' expectations, social norms, and moral obligations imposed by a culture that venerates passivity. You must be obedient. You must be humble. You must swallow your anger. You must avoid confrontation. The camel accepts everything. It is strong in its ability to endure, but this strength is sterile. It is the strength of resignation, not of creation. And to make it worse, the camel takes pride in its own burden. The more it submits, the more it convinces itself that it's being virtuous. This is the stage where most people remain, and perhaps you see yourself in it. But Nietzsche doesn't leave us stuck there. A moment arrives when the camel's spirit rises in rebellion. It can no longer carry the weight of the lies it's been bearing. It longs for freedom. It longs to assert itself. And to do that, it must transform into the lion. The lion represents the spirit that has learned to say no. No to outside demands. No to slave morality. No to the social roles that diminish its essence. The lion is the living symbol of the awakened will to power. But understand this: the lion doesn't destroy for destruction's sake. Its battle is for space, for an inner realm where it can exist in truth. To claim that space, the lion must confront its greatest enemy, the dragon of thou shalt. This dragon gleams with 1,000 shimmering scales, and on each one is written a commandment: thou shalt be meek, thou shalt submit, thou shalt avoid conflict. Defeating this dragon takes immense courage. You'll face judgment, criticism, rejection. You'll have to wrestle with the guilt that's been etched into you since childhood. But the fight is essential, because only when you learn to say a real conscious no can you finally break free from the chains of submission. And then comes the last metamorphosis: the child. The child is the reborn spirit, free from the weight of the camel, free from the defensive need of the lion. Now the spirit is creative. It no longer lives by reacting, but by creating. It creates its own values. It chooses where to submit and where to rebel. It lives lightly, authentically, joyfully. At this stage, conflict transforms. It's no longer a battlefield, but a space for creation. You're no longer driven by the urge to defeat others, but by the need to express and affirm who you truly are. This is the genuine rebirth Nietzsche speaks of. But reaching it requires passing through the fire of confrontation. It means walking the desert of rejection and uncertainty. It means breaking, once and for all, the fear that has kept you bound. And this leads us to an essential question: how do you discover who you really are behind all these layers of fear and submission? Nietzsche offers us a powerful answer in Ecce Homo, the path of becoming who you are. This is what we will explore in the next part. You will understand why facing conflict is a crucial step in discovering your true identity, and how this journey can transform every aspect of your life. Becoming who you are, the path to authenticity. Now that you have understood the process of transformation from camel to lion, from lion to child, it is time to understand what is really at stake. Nietzsche challenges us with one of the deepest and most provocative ideas of his entire philosophy: becoming who you are. In Ecce Homo, he writes this formula as an invitation and, at the same time, as a warning. Because becoming who you are is not a natural, spontaneous, automatic process. On the contrary, it is a struggle. And the first battle you need to win is precisely against the fear of conflict. Have you ever stopped to think about how much of your life you live for others? How many times have you chosen the path that would please your parents, your partner, your friends, your boss, even if that was not what you really wanted? How many times have you swallowed your truth to avoid discomfort? Nietzsche shows us that this is the most insidious trap of existence. Most people never become who they are. They spend their lives playing roles, wearing masks, adjusting to expectations, trying to be what they believe they should be. But there is a brutal price for this false harmony. Each time you suppress your true will, a part of you dies. Each time you avoid an important conflict, your identity dilutes a little more. Each time you say yes when you wanted to say no, you move further away from who you really are. Nietzsche understood that the fear of conflict is not just a behavioral problem, it is an existential obstacle. Because conflict is the field where identity is forged. It is in the clash with the world, with others, with ideas, that you discover what you truly value, what you truly believe, what you truly desire. Without conflict, there is no self-knowledge. Without self-knowledge, there is no authenticity. Without authenticity, there is no full life, just an empty theater. So, becoming who you truly are demands the courage to face the confrontations that matter, to say no to others' expectations, no to the roles forced upon you, and no to your own habit of adapting just to be accepted. But it doesn't end there. Nietzsche reminds us, this journey is deeply individual. There's no pre-written template for who you're meant to become. There's no universal morality you're obliged to obey. You must carve out your own path, define your own values, shape your own way of living. And that's terrifying. Because without the herd's rules to guide you, you're left alone. In the beginning, it hurts. You lose the applause. You lose the comforting illusion of safety. But in return, you gain something far more precious: the chance to live in integrity. Every conflict you face with awareness becomes a step forward. Every boundary you set with clarity is an act of self-affirmation. And every time you speak your truth, trembling, afraid, you move closer to who you truly are. Nietzsche doesn't offer comfort. What he offers is the possibility of living as an authentic individual, and that is worth more than any approval society can give. But to reach it, you must accept an unsettling truth. Silence in the face of injustice, abuse, or oppression is not virtue. It's complicity. And that is what we will talk about in the last part of this video. You will understand why the silence, which you may have cultivated as a sign of kindness, actually feeds everything that oppresses you, and how to break once and for all with this cycle. Silence is also an accomplice. Now that you've made it this far, it's time to face a truth that many prefer to avoid. Your silence has a price, and it's not a small price. How many times have you told yourself that staying silent was the wisest choice, that it wasn't worth fighting, that it wouldn't change anything, that it was better to let it go? How many times have you swallowed humiliations, disrespect, small and large abuses, all in the name of supposed harmony? But here's the truth. Every time you choose silence in the face of injustice, you're not being neutral. You're reinforcing the very behavior that oppresses you. You're signaling to the world that you're willing to accept being treated this way. You're allowing cycles of domination, abuse, and disrespect to persist not just in your own life, but in society as a whole. Nietzsche saw this with clarity. He understood that a morality rooted in fear doesn't create peace, it corrodes the spirit. When you stay silent to avoid conflict, you're not building a better life, you're burying your will. And don't be mistaken, the world picks up on this. People notice when you're afraid to stand up for yourself. And those with bad intentions exploit it. The silence you believe is shielding you is, in fact, exposing you. Every boundary you leave unspoken becomes an open door for someone to step over. Every truth you withhold creates space for lies to settle in. Nietzsche teaches that to live authentically demands courage. And courage isn't about being fearless. It's about choosing to act even when fear is still there. When necessary, Conflict becomes the ground where integrity stands tall. It's the place where you prove to yourself and to the world that you have a spine, that you hold values, that you know your limits. So the next time you feel the urge to stay silent, ask yourself, am I truly being wise, or am I simply being afraid? If you ask that question honestly, it has the power to change your life. And don't forget, becoming who you truly are doesn't happen through quiet complacency. It happens through the bold affirmation of your existence, through the necessary confrontations, through the conflicts you can no longer avoid. You weren't meant to live as an eternal camel burdened by the weight of others. Inside you lives both the lion and the child. You already carry the strength to say no, and the creativity to shape a life that is genuinely your own. But that demands action, and it starts now. If this video resonated with you, if something in it struck a chord, I want you to drop a comment below and write, I choose to no longer remain silent. Say it, because putting that decision into words is already your first step toward making it real. And don't stop here, to keep going. The next video is just as vital as this one. It will take you even deeper into the transformation you've already begun. I'll see you there.